On a road that wound through the dry, barren hills between Jerusalem and Jericho, a road spoken of in whispers and remembered in bruises, where the stones seemed to carry the memory of every cry for help and the shadows clung to the jagged cliffs like silent predators. A question was about to take on flesh and blood. Who is my neighbor? It did not begin with a robbery or with a stranger's kindness, but with a man, educated, polished, confident, standing before Jesus of Nazareth in the crowd, his robe neat, his voice calm yet sharpened with intent. "Teacher," he said, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" And the people leaned in, sensing the tension beneath the polite tone. For this was no humble seeker. This was an expert in the law, a man who knew the scriptures inside and out, who had come to test the young rabbi whose words were turning the world upside down. But Jesus, with the wisdom of eternity in his eyes, did not meet the challenge with a challenge. He met it with a question. "What is written in the law? How do you read it?" The man answered without hesitation, reciting the heartbeat of the Torah. "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." "You have answered correctly," Jesus replied, his voice steady, his gaze unwavering. "Do this and you will live." The moment could have ended there, but pride rarely bows so quickly. The man's mind turned, seeking to maintain control of the conversation, to draw boundaries around the inconvenient demands of love. And so, with a calculated pause, he asked the question that has haunted hearts ever since. "And who is my neighbor?" The crowd waited, some expecting a theological debate, others perhaps hoping for an answer that kept love comfortably small. But Jesus did not give him a definition. He gave him a road every listener knew, one that wound downward from the city of God to the city of palms, a descent of more than 3,000 feet in less than 20 miles, through twisting passes and limestone cliffs where bandits could vanish in an instant. It was here that a certain man, a Jew like many of them, set out one day from Jerusalem, perhaps after worship at the temple, perhaps with thoughts of home or business in Jericho, his steps steady, his sandals crunching on gravel, the air shimmering with heat. He was not the first to make this journey, and he would not be the last. But on that day, danger found him. From behind the rocks they came, the ones who lived by the blade and the club, their faces hidden in scarves, their movements quick and merciless. The first blow took his breath, the second dropped him to his knees, and in moments they were on him, hands pulling, fists striking, sandals kicking. He cried out, but the only answer was the tearing of cloth and the sound of coins spilling into foreign hands. They stripped him bare, leaving nothing but the sting of open wounds and the taste of dust in his mouth, then vanished back into the rocks, their laughter fading into the wind. The sun hung above him like a merciless overseer, each minute a thief stealing what little strength remained. His lips cracked, his vision blurred, the road swam in and out of focus. And then a shadow, sandals, a figure in the shimmering light, a priest, his robe marking him as one who served in the temple courts, one who lifted prayers and sacrifices before the Almighty. Surely if anyone would stop, it would be this man. But the priest's eyes, perhaps glancing quickly at the blood, the torn flesh, the still form, shifted to the other side of the road. Perhaps he feared ceremonial defilement. Perhaps he feared an ambush, that the man was bait for bandits still lurking nearby. Perhaps his schedule was too tight, his duties too pressing. Whatever his reasoning, his pace did not break, and soon the priest's figure was no more than a retreating shape in the heat. The man on the ground closed his eyes again. Time passed. Another shadow fell across him, a Levite this time, one whose lineage and calling bound him to the service of God's house, one trained in the words of the law. His steps slowed. He came closer, close enough to see the rise and fall of the chest, the shallow breath. But then his jaw tightened, his gaze shifted away, and he too crossed over, keeping his distance. And once again, the only sound was the whisper of the wind across the rocks. Hours might have passed, or minutes. It is hard to measure time when pain blurs its edges before another traveler appeared. To the man's fading mind, it was simply another hope about to walk away. But to the listening crowd around Jesus, the mention of this man's identity was a jolt, a Samaritan. For centuries, Jews and Samaritans had been enemies, divided by history, by religion, by contempt passed from generation to generation. To say the word Samaritan in a Jewish crowd was to stir memories of insults, disputes over worship, and the bitterness of bloodlines declared impure. And yet, this Samaritan did not cross the road. He did not glance away. He saw the man, and something deep in him refused to let him pass. Perhaps he remembered his own times of rejection, the sting of being dismissed without being known. Perhaps it was simply the reflection of God's own heart in his own. Whatever the reason, he went to him. He knelt in the dust, his hands unafraid to touch what others would not. He poured oil on the wounds to soothe, wine to cleanse, his own cloth to bind. Then, lifting the man with the effort of one who refuses to let love remain a feeling, he placed him on his own animal, meaning that the Samaritan himself would now walk the rest of the way under the beating sun. Step by step, mile by mile, until the walls of an inn rose from the horizon. There he laid the man on a bed, speaking to the innkeeper with the urgency of one who would not abandon the work halfway. 2 silver coins, a full day's wage each, passed from his hand to the keepers. "Take care of him. When I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense." And with that, he left the man in safety, without fanfare, without the expectation of repayment, his only concern the life he had just rescued. Jesus' voice stilled as he looked at the man who had asked, "Who is my neighbor?" "Which of these 3, he said, "do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers?" The answer came, slow but sure, "The one who showed mercy." And Jesus said, "Go and do likewise." This was no soft moral tale, no distant history. It was and is a mirror. The road from Jerusalem to Jericho winds through every human heart, and along it lie the wounded, some bleeding on sidewalks in our cities, some silenced by loneliness in our neighborhoods, some crushed beneath the weight of debts, fears, and unspoken grief. And still, the priest passes by, sometimes dressed in the robes of religion, sometimes in the suit of the professional, sometimes in the hurried clothes of the busy. Still, the Levite steps aside, sometimes with a glance of pity, sometimes with the numbness of fatigue, sometimes with the excuse that someone else will come. But the Samaritan still walks too. Every time a stranger stops to help another, every time mercy overrides prejudice, every time love crosses the road. And at the heart of it all is Jesus himself, the truest Good Samaritan, who found us lying in the dust, stripped of righteousness, wounded by sin, left for dead by the thief who comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. He did not pass by. He came down into our world, knelt beside us, poured his own blood for our cleansing, lifted us on his shoulders, and carried us to the safety of his Father's house, paying the full price for our restoration with his life. And now he looks at us, not merely as hearers of the story, but as those who must live it. The road is still dangerous. It will cost something to stop, but it will cost far more to pass by. So today, look for the one lying in your path. Cross the road, bind the wounds, give the time, the resources, the presence. For this is love in action. And if this story has stirred your heart, if you believe the world needs more mercy where there is hate, more compassion where there is division, more courage where there is fear, then walk with us in this mission. Subscribe for more of these powerful stories. Share this with someone who needs hope. And join the journey of following the one who crossed every distance to rescue you. Because someone, somewhere, is lying on the road right now. And you might be the only one who will stop.